Hello and welcome to this Future Tech virtual roundtable from Foodservice Consultant Society International, FCSI. Today we're focusing on designing commercial kitchens and operating food service spaces in the lodging sector. That's hotels, motels, campsites, clubs and everything in between. I'm Michael Jones from Progressive Content and Editorial Director of FCSI's Foodservice Consultant magazine. This roundtable is kindly supported by Welbilt Inc. Big thanks to them. I will explore some of the trends and also the headwinds impacting the lodging sector and its food service offering, but crucially, the solutions available to it as well. In order to do that, I'm delighted to be joined by two leading FCSI member consultants and a corporate chef from Welbilt with a great deal of experience in this sector. So let's get going and let me ask each participant to introduce themselves and to tell us about their area of expertise. Alec, can we start with you first, please?
Sure. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate the opportunity. Sean, thank you as well. And Ken, of course, thanks for participating. My name is Alec Bauer. I'm the principal of Kitchen, Restaurant, and Bar Specialists. We are a distributed, small boutique distributed workforce of food service consultants. We do traditional hospitality design, specification, and implementation on predominantly what I would say traditional hospitality projects, restaurants, hotels, lodging. Some corporate and business and institutional work, a little bit of schools, but predominantly hospitality, a lot of chef-driven restaurant projects and hotels, things like that.
Wonderful. Welcome, Alex. Thank you very much. And you first, Ken, please.
Hi, thanks, guys. Yep, Ken Schwartz with SSA, also food service design and consulting firm, specializing in like all things food service, from restaurants, hotels, casinos, healthcare. We do some work in other various segments of the industry, higher ed, healthcare sometimes, corrections, but primarily hotels, casinos, resorts, hospitality type work.
Excellent. Thank you, Ken. And Sean, please.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for having me. My name is Sean Copeland, corporate chef at Welbilt. I primarily work with global strategic accounts, but I also work with everything else under the rainbow, all the different lines of equipment underneath the Welbilt umbrella. So pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much, Sean, as well. To start then, can you please just identify the current state of the market for your food service clients in the hotel and lodging sector? So tell us, would you describe this as a period of growth? Is it a period of recovery? Has it recalibrated yet? Is the sector profitable again for the clients you're working with? And also maybe just give an overview of what your sort of future slate of project looks like in the lodging sector. Sean, let's stay with you first, please.
All right. Well, I mean, that's kind of a double-sided question there, right? We've seen a lot of growth and certain, hotel brands throughout the industry that have taken the pandemic as a major turning point to, hey, we're going to reinvest in our kitchens. We know that things might come back to normal sooner than later, but they might not. So how are we going to change our kitchen landscape and footprint and future-proof it to a certain extent?
Yep.
Even before the pandemic started, we were seeing, diminishing skilled labor in the kitchens and throughout hospitality in general, right? So what are we doing to combat that? We can't have these monstrous kitchens like we used to have per se, because basically we don't have the staff to fill it. So we're getting smarter in our layouts of kitchens. The equipment is getting smarter by the day. And it's almost a turning point in the fact that, what is going on in the industry as far as labor and the chefs and the cooks, we're driving some of the innovations forward for the equipment. So it's starting over. It's almost like a blank slate. It's a very exciting time, speaking from a chef standpoint, that we're really driving changes in a positive direction for the future of hotels and resorts.
Great stuff. Thank you, Sean. Alec, would you also describe this as a turning point for the sector?
I think the turning point is certainly an option for a lot of the operators out there. Although with a lot of aspects of the industry right now, it really depends on the type of operation. Presently, I'd say we're seeing a combination of all three of those, as you noted: regrowth, recovery, and recalibration. Really depends on where an operator is in that spectrum. We have some hotel clients who were set for expansion and wound up contracting in the beginning of COVID. Others who seem to be flush with equity saw the opportunity for for construction and development during a time when their operations were not otherwise as badly impacted. If your rooms are full, you don't want to shut things down to do a renovation. If your rooms are not as full, but you feel confident about the future, it's a great time to do that reno. We definitely saw, I would say on balance, we saw more growth than contraction in the lodging sector, at least across our client mix. Presently, it seems as if room rates have rebounded quite a bit over the last 18, 24 months, as we've all seen for anybody who travels. The upshot from my perspective is more growth in the lodging sector. We have a handful, a new slate of hotel operators and management contract holders who are booking new projects presently.
That's good to hear. Well, thank you very much, Alec. And Ken, does that chime with your experience too?
So, pretty interesting perspective. So during the pandemic, I think it was primarily the hospitality industry that kept our staff busy, where we had other segments that completely, pumped the brakes. In some cases, ceased all operations. Right? We did a lot of airport work, and the projects and the client that we were doing those projects for, that were in the airport segment, came to a screeching halt, as did all of their projects, and they've been incredibly slow to come back to life. However, we had some very astute hospitality clients who I think really took advantage of one, closing. Of course, the reduction in revenue hurt, but I think, as Alex said, right, they took this as an opportunity, right, to take a look and do some of those things that they needed to do for probably years, but just didn't have the time, right, because they just couldn't at that time afford to close down. They had just booked way too much business. So we've seen that continue to grow, and we're back to our pre-pandemic business volumes relative to our firm. And a lot of that is due to work in the hospitality segment.
Fantastic. It's really good to hear, Ken. And despite that kind of, I guess, that largely very positive overview from the three of you there, let's focus on some of the challenges that your clients are still facing, maybe some of the present challenges, but also some of those future long-term challenges. What are the biggest headaches your clients are experiencing right now? Alec, let's start with you first, please.
You mentioned a few in the sort of pre-meeting right up there: COVID, labor costs, supply chain, inflation, all these things. Those are the pretty regular headaches, but those I think are probably pretty well known and ubiquitous across the line. What I would add, something that I'm seeing lately, and I'm curious to hear Ken's thoughts on this, not to change gears here, but project cadence is one that I see really, really challenging, and seeing architects, general contractors, equipment purveyors, and manufacturers realign themselves over the last 18 to 24 months as lead times have become more and more challenging. Whereas some years ago, we would wait until a project was already permitted and had begun construction to get a contract signed with an equipment contractor and start procuring equipment. Now we need to start, we need to get somebody into a contract to start procuring equipment long before we're in permit, long before we have health department comments back or what have you. So it seems as if that cycle hasn't really settled, and a lot of the other disciplines within our larger project teams haven't necessarily reconciled that. And we see this with structural steel, with mechanical equipment, whatever it may be. And it's not that the projects need to take that much longer, it's that they just need a different internal schedule. And that's been a little bit challenging as clients all get to what they think is they're getting to a benchmark in their project development, and the setbacks are usually related, I would say, primarily to somebody not being ready, whether that's an installer, a vendor, a manufacturer, or just product availability.
Great answer. Thank you very much, Alec. Ken, what's your experience of that?
Yeah, Alec makes a great point, right, relative to project cadence, right? And I think, again, pre-pandemic, right, you had a developer or an owner who had funding from whatever source or self-funded, and they wanted the period from we're committing to do this project to we want the project to be finished and open in the shortest amount of time possible. The industry doesn't allow that at the moment, right? With supply chain lead time issues, And it's not just food service, right? It's the lighting world, it's the construction material world, it's all of those things.
Let's hear from the manufacturer. Sean, how are you guys facing these kind of particular headwinds, these particular challenges?
Well, I mean, I absolutely agree with everybody on the lead times issues, and you know, it's with everything right now. I mean, it's equipment, it's building materials, and it's food, and we definitely can't argue any of those points in any way to kind of make any of it right to that standpoint. And let's set aside the labor aspect of what's going on with these challenges right now. And I'm going to put a positive spin on this, okay? And this is a real chef-driven, back of the house opinion on what we're seeing in the industry. So now everybody knows that they're going to have to wait on this product, right? You know, whether it be food, whether it be the equipment, or just the general shell of the restaurant, or whatever they're going into. For the first time in a long time, for a lot of chefs, they're not having to be reactive to a situation, right? So, you know, a lot of times these chefs at hotels, you know, they're not exactly the decision maker on what equipment they're getting into their space per se. So with this given time, we're seeing a lot more people take a proactive approach to testing their kitchen, looking at the layout of their kitchen, and you know, feeling out the ergonomics of how their lines are going to work. You know, testing their product, just kind of bulletproofing their maybe not necessarily bulletproofing, but getting the foundations down as far as their product, giving them time to source with lead times and do that testing and development. So when they can actually get into their space, they know exactly what they're working with, how to use it. They're well prepared, and you know, they're ready to train their staff. So, I mean, I'm not saying any of it is good in that way, because, you know, there's definitely expense incurred and time that you're not open, bringing in revenue. But, you know, look at some of these disasters that have happened with, you know, so-called soft openings, you know, when stuff reopened, and they're just getting, you know, mauled, right? You know, a lot of places subsidized with takeout and online orders and whatnot. Then all of a sudden the dining rooms open back up, and it's like, well, holy cow, I went from doing 80% of my revenue just out of takeout in some cases, or, you know, limited service, and now you're going to tack the dining room back on top of that. So people are seeing and adapting day to day to these challenges, and they're trying to, you know, just streamline, take the knowledge that's given every day. It's changing. Let's adapt and let's get better. And from a culinary standpoint, that's just an amazing positive feat that we're seeing from multiple customers, multiple brands in the industry.
Great answer. Thank you, Sean. Alec, could you maybe identify some of the specific operational challenges that hotel food service operations have to experience compared to other sectors that you work in? What are some of the key differences?
I think it's different in the traditional hotel 3, 4, 5-star level service environment. It's challenging right now. Of course, the labor is a big impact, but the nuance there is that hotels right now, especially ones newly in development or newly recently opened, need to have a variety of amenity options for guests. So that's pool bar, that's a 3-meal restaurant, that's a specialty restaurant, that may be a taco truck or something like that. Somewhere interesting, something Instagrammable. They're trying to hit a lot of notes to get guests in the hotel, right? It's always been an important part of hotels is what do you put at the ground floor to get heads and beds upstairs? And I think the challenge there, both from a designer and operational perspective, and that Sean touched on this a little bit, is again a recalibration, Michael, to go back to how you said it before, of how you operate, right? We have some hotel developers right now who are still looking at the landscape from a traditional perspective in terms of kitchens. And there's a lot to be said there for a large main kitchen that can handle all the bulk receiving and bulk prep and dish food out to individual outlets. Well, those outlets used to be larger and more robust, but as everything has gotten more and more expensive, our back of house spaces have become more and more compressed. Everything is a horse race in terms of who can colonize which areas of any given back of house space. So we're constantly looking for ways to make these kitchens more compact, which in turn has an impact on the operations. And so that comes back to a little bit of project cadence, project outlook, and overall operational mentality. We're very much in a phase, and to take off from what Sean was saying, we're in a phase where the technology on the back end, on the manufacturing side, has actually leapfrogged operations. For a long, long time, operators were waiting for the tech to catch up. And now all of a sudden the tech has passed so many operators out there still not quite savvy with cook chill, with combi ovens and blast chillers and any of the speed cook devices, and how good they've gotten in the last handful of years, and how to implement those into smaller spaces, more compact spaces that still get you that kind of interesting, accessible, savvy, contemporary amenities for guests. It's this really, I mean, I find it really interesting and challenging from our side on the development side to work with operators when they're still in concept phase, to help them tailor their concepts to what's available, both in terms of their space allocation in the actual building that they're going to build, but also in terms of what equipment is out there. How we have a project, a hotel in development right now. We're in the middle of completely reconcepting one of the outlets to be really compact, prep heavy, and then execution light, using more of the speed cooking and hot holding and some of the stuff that's available now. And that's still a little bit of a conflict in terms of how operators are developing their approach to everything from their performers and P&Ls to otherwise. But it helps on labor. It doesn't help on lead time or cost. Those are separate issues, but it can help on labor, and it can help get those interesting amenities out to guests, I think, in a meaningful way. But it's an interesting time as far as whether or not folks have gotten on board with some of the new tech or not, or where they're at in that sort of education process.
Outstanding. Thank you, Alec. Ken, do you concur with that? How do you approach projects differently to something like, I don't know, the B&I sector or a casino project compared to lodging?
I think that probably the single biggest factor is, and I think Sean, from the voice of the operations side, I think they're just challenged with human resources, right? I think they're challenged with hiring the appropriate amount of people, or an appropriate amount of skilled people. And I think Alec made a good point, right? I think finally some of this technology, right, has caught up, and some of these, rapid cook ovens, the ability to blast chill or blast freeze really, really well without any deterioration of the product. So you get a bit of a longer shelf life. So you don't have this constant kind of daily prep, but you could maybe prep every other day or every third day. And again, I think all of that speaks to not necessarily reducing labor, but just hiring the right amount of labor that's needed. And I think that in itself is probably, one of the single greatest resources that the industry has come up with in a very long time, are these kind of labor saving tools that provide really some of the same quality results as some of the traditional equipment that a lot of operators are used to. And again, I think it's a change in mindset, right? It's a lot of training, it's a lot of demos. I think it's going to take operators and chefs kind of seeing is believing that some of these tools will perform really well without necessarily having some of the high-level skilled labor that they used to have.
Thank you very much, Ken. Sean, Alec and Ken have already identified some brilliant new initiatives and new technology and innovation that is being adopted into the market already, into the sector. Is there any particular new innovation or new technology that you feel has really sort of moved the dial in the lodging sector in particular, and how you prepare for mass catering? So how have you seen innovation come to the fore and really sort of change the sector?
Well, absolutely. Let me touch just for a minute on kind of what Alec and Ken were saying. I mean, you guys hit the nail on the head with a lot of that stuff, right? And when we're talking hotels and resort, at the end of the day, banqueting is always going to be your bread and butter, right? That's what people are coming in for. And we want to capture everything we can, right? So we're talking about new technologies. We're talking about combis, cook, chill in the banqueting sector. And that way you can keep your skilled labor in that heart of house area. right? And then we want to capture everybody else that's in the hotel. So out of the pool bar, we have ventless technologies, stuff that's icon driven, stuff that can be done by your less skilled staff, right? It could be a bartender, he could be making drinks and he could be running a speed oven, right? Anything that comes out of there, and that's generating revenue. But all in all, overall, the biggest piece of technology that I see really changing the game is, once all the equipment is connected, we're going to be able to manage all of this, and we're going to be able to adapt our labor deployment based on where is needed from the data gathered from this equipment, right? So it's a good example of even just collecting what we're seeing in the digital world, and how we're going to translate that into future growth and revenue, right? So stuff as simple as just knowing how many covers you're doing out of the pool bar in real time, and that also can lead, linked up with your POS system. You have perpetual inventory. You don't have anybody physically having to go around and to man these inventory systems that are coming in the future. Along with that, we don't have the staff to have necessarily, eyes on other employees as far as supervision anymore, right? So when we're looking at the technology that's built into ovens and these pieces of equipment now, we're able to digitally hold people accountable, whether that be good, bad, or indifferent, but it's trackable, data that we're moving forward to either, we're using it from a predictive sense of where we need to go, or, is it a problem solving aspect through that? So things are very exciting, and I think it's really a question of how the equipment is moving along towards the future. And, hotels and resorts are kind of a little bit different than the technology we've seen in other sectors, right? We'll just kind of compare them. C-stores, K through 12, moving to combi ovens over traditional convection ovens, or just speed ovens in the C-store sector to really broaden their food service options, right? Typical resorts, you're paying a premium for a good chef, and that whole chain of command of chefs to run and manage your operation. And they might have the mindset of, hey, I want a traditional French cooktop, I want regular convection ovens, but we want to bring to light that, it's not always just about the cooking, even though we can make those products the same or better or faster or more efficiently than they can with traditional technologies, but it's all the ancillary products and features that come along with it that can help them run their business successfully.
Excellent. Thank you, Sean. Ken, to Sean's point there about, there's some very exciting equipment, some new ideas, some new innovation that's really kind of shaping parts of the lodging sector. Is any of this making you rethink or reassess how you design commercial kitchen spaces in this sector? Is it changing that?
It doesn't necessarily have us rethinking, right? It's giving us options. And some of those options are incredibly viable. And I'll flip back a little bit to kind of the airport scenario, right? I mean, when you think about, kind of food service square footage cost is an incredible premium in an airport, right? It probably as expensive or more expensive than most very large cities, right? You get a very tiny little kitchen that's got to produce an awful lot of meals in a 24-hour period. Listen, I'm not going to speak to the quality of those meals, right? Some of the stuff starts off really good. Some of it starts off at a very low cost. So, low cost in, low cost out, so to speak. But, right. But even segments of that industry have kind of leaned on manufacturers to come up with tools that are simple to use, that will produce a very, very good product. And you start to see the ripple effect of like rapid cook ovens, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when you think about the number of pieces that were available on the market, there were very few, right? Now there's several manufacturers that have multiple models that do all kinds of different things for different purposes. That provides flexibility in the design.
Yeah.
It also then you start to consider, again, how much elbow room do you need for all of this, and how much labor do you need? And as you start to consider those things, and again, to Sean's point, right, about the chef that wants to have the traditional French top, or a couple of open burners and a plancha, and some of these things. We start to think about replacing some of that with induction, right? It takes up less space, it produces less heat. There's a reduced requirement for exhaust ventilation, reduced requirement to make up conditioned makeup air, right? All of these things have a significant cost reduction to the project and should be considered, right, on any project that we're designing. So it's really not just, hey, what can the widget do in terms of cooking a great steak? How fast can I produce chicken breast, right? It's all of the other ripple effect. And at the end of the day, it's our clients, right, that are writing the check for this whole development that's really going to be interested in what is the ripple effect of all of this. So again, us as consultants, right, having that knowledge and being aware of all of these tools that are out there for operators makes us, a valuable part of the client's design team. And so, we welcome, as much information on the new technology that we can get our hands on.
Great answer, Ken. Thank you. Alec, to Ken's point there about this creating like incredible viable options for you designers and for consultants, to you, do the same fundamental rules of design remain, whatever the market pressures or challenges? You still do the same, still approach a design project the same way?
For me, the design fundamentals remain the same, and I'll echo what Ken said in a moment. But tight, well-appointed spaces, compact, that are appropriate for the level of execution needed in any given area. Cooks and chefs have what they need within an appropriate amount of distance, supported by, as much as possible, a generous dry refrigerated storage area and whatnot. I'm really bullish on this trend towards heavier prep here in the States. This is something the Europeans have been doing for a long, long time that we haven't historically done as much here. We're really heavy in an a la carte mode, everything cooked a la minute, which is, as we're touching on here, not necessarily the most efficient. Cook chill, combi ovens and chillers and whatnot do a way better job. You can take a daily prep list and turn it into 2 or 3 times a week. You've got longer shelf life, all that kind of stuff. But in terms of the design, what Ken said is spot on. I agree with that. The variety of equipment options can be a little flummoxing for a lot of operators who are new to rapid cook oven, small combis, ventless equipment. What can we do with induction? What can we do with electric planchas? What can we do with this interesting piece that's a blast chiller, blast freezer? Oh, it's also a proof box. Like, there's some really interesting equipment out there, and I think a lot of the onus falls on us, on the consulting and on the manufacturer chef side, to get that information sort of reflected back to the chefs in ways that they understand, meaning, okay, we can go this traditional route like you came to me and said you wanted, or let me turn that on its head and tell you how you can make that product using 6 less pieces of equipment and 2/3 of the space that we would otherwise need. But you need to learn how to use X, Y, or Z on the equipment side. And then they say, whoa, I'm not sure if we're ready for that. And then we talk about it. And now I forget whether it was Ken or Sean who said this, but the value of going from, for example, a traditional convection to a combi isn't just that the combi can do everything that a convection does, but it can do more with less. You can be more consistent across your operation, especially if you're a multi-outlet operator, or if you have multiple outlets within a resort or complex. You turn it on, you take this piece of pre-marinated chicken, you put it in this pan, you put it in this oven, and you press this button, and everybody on the property will get the exact same result, assuming they're using the same piece of equipment in each kitchen. I think those are advantages that are readily exploited by savvy chefs and food and beverage directors who see that consistency is a big factor in the labor game right now, because we're not going to ever be as flush with labor as we were some years ago. So we need to do more with less. And some of the technologies that inherently just do really good things on their own also have those follow-on benefits, which open up a lot of doors for us on the design side. But a challenge, and Ken, I'm sure would agree with this, is we don't necessarily make the decisions for the clients. We can show them all the options and we can tell them what we think they should do, but we definitely have clients who prefer a traditional route. They say these are 4 or 5 things that we have always done in a traditional gas convection oven, and that's what we're going to continue using, and that's okay with us. We're going to put those in. I don't see them going going by the wayside. They're pretty economical in a budget conscious project. So we have a ton of options on the design side for sure. We try to stick to the same fundamentals, but the options are definitely there. It's a good time for that.
Outstanding. Thank you, Alec. Ken, Alec talked there about the labour game and doing more with less. What would your recipe be for fixing the labour crisis in this part of the sector?
If I knew that answer, man, I would not even be on this call. I'd probably be out of the industry completely, living on an island somewhere. I do want to hit on one other aspect, and I thought Alec was going to mention it, because we just had this come up on a project where the client was looking to reduce capital cost. And oddly enough, one of the items, and this is a big project, it's all in equipment is about $9 million. And so, they were looking, is there a way to cut costs wherever we can cut? And, went to the equipment dealer and said, hey, are there some options? Well, I don't know, we probably had throughout the property, maybe 20 combi ovens, maybe 22 combi ovens. And they said, well, we can swap out the combi ovens for convection ovens, maybe save 10 or 12,000 an oven. And the client's like, Ken, we think we want to do this. What do you think? And I said, I think it's a stupid idea, but you can do whatever you want. And they said, oh, okay, right. You hit us right between the eyes. Why do you think that? And I think the one piece that we haven't really talked about, right? We've talked about the labor challenges, labor savings. But on the flip side, and I think Sean would speak to this because his companies make convection ovens and combi ovens, is the amount of yield, right, product yield that you get out of a combi oven is much greater than you get out of a convection oven. So when you have a big banqueting facility or large restaurants and you put $100 in the convection oven and you only get $72 of product out after you finish cooking it, versus putting stuff in a combi oven and getting maybe $88 of sellable product out, right? It doesn't take somebody too long to calculate over, so many banquets, so many months or so many years, these combi things, pay for themselves. And so we do get faced with those challenges of, hey, should we reduce the project cost, right? And again, what's the ripple effect of the cost reduction? Because it's not just a first round cost reduction, right? If you went to traditional baking, right, or roasting, you're going to need more equipment. You're going to end up with less yield. And oh, by the way, you're going to have more labor do it because that older, more traditional equipment doesn't have a lot of the technology that the stuff with the probes and the electronics, and it tells you when to start it and it tells you when to stop it. And, one piece of equipment tells you that it's finishing up a cooking cycle and it's already firing up the blast chiller, right? I mean, there's already that technology out there. So, we always say kind of buyer beware, right? If the deal tastes like candy, spit it out immediately until you have all of the facts, right? Because a lot of times, sometimes a client will just have a piece of the puzzle and not see all of it first before making kind of an educated decision. So back to the labor challenge. I'm going to put you on the spot, Michael, and you're going to die when I do this. I'm going to be the guy to ask the question because about a year or a year and a half ago, at end of one of our sessions, you said, okay, I'm going to hit you with like a follow-up question. Whatever comes to mind, tell me immediately. The most labor-saving piece of equipment in a kitchen. That's the question you asked me. Do you remember the answer?
Ventilation.
Wow, I'm impressed. You remember the question. Ventilation, the single most labor-saving piece of equipment in a kitchen.
Yeah, it's a great point. Ken, you mentioned there you're bringing in aspects of the connected kitchen, aspects of automation. Let's bring in Sean's view on that. What role do connected kitchens, automation, robotics really have to play in the lodging sector? How transformational do you see them being? You've heard the consultant's opinion. Let's get yours.
There is absolutely a role for it, right? We really touched on the connected kitchen aspect of all that can do. Collection on data, whether it be for planning or being reactive to situations. And a good point to go with there is, we have all this ability now that we can say, hey, well, you've ran so many cook cycles on your speed oven, and pretty soon you're going to need to change your magnetrons based on historical data from the manufacturer, so your service agent has the parts on board, whatever. That way, if you're having them come out for anything else, you can look at that and say, hey, this is about due. It's preventative maintenance, right? And everybody always kind of hates that. It's like, well, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But a Tuesday morning when your restaurant's not open for operation is a heck of a lot better than a Friday night when you're going to make $10,000 and you can't afford to lose that piece of equipment.
But you know what, Sean, if you don't mind me interjecting, and
absolutely.
and Alec can chime in too. I think collectively as an industry, we have a problem with clients relative to preventative maintenance and warranties, right? You're talking about the equipment that is the heartbeat of their operation. It is the equipment that in essence prints money for them, right? And they all treat it like it's I bought it and it should never break. And yet all of us who buy or lease a car always want the extended warranty, or we want the service included as part of the lease. And it is a piece of the industry that I just don't understand from the operator standpoint. Listen, if I was the developer, I don't know what those guys are spending on their resort. My guess is it's probably close to $1 billion, $9 million in food service equipment. I'd want to make darn sure that I had every warranty available for all of that equipment. If I'm spending $9 million with various manufacturers, I want any problem to be their problem, not my problem. And it is the piece of the industry that I don't understand the mentality of not. We create preventative maintenance programs for clients, but I don't understand why they're not clients lining up asking for such a thing.
I know, no, I'm right there with you. And listen, from the majority of my background was in hotels and resorts, and it's just unbelievable to me that you could have a hotel in the same brand, exact same layout, footprint, kitchen, everything, and one is complete opposite to the other as far as the way things are taken care of and run, right? And it's just I don't know. You have somebody that has an oven for a year and beats it and it's not working right. Then you go see one that's been used every day for the past 8-10 years and it looks brand new. I don't understand that concept of if you have something good, keep it working, take care of it, just like you do your car, just like you do everything at your house, and it's the connected part of this. I'm hoping is going to kind of bridge that gap when we finally get there, because until we have this data on this equipment, we don't have anything that we can physically go and sit down and put in front of that chef or purchasing director or whoever that person may be that's calling you out to work on this equipment. And they say, well, we clean it every day and it still breaks, right? And we can lay this piece of paper down there with a printout that says, hey, listen, over the past month, it shows that you skipped, 10, 20 cleaning cycles on the oven. It's been out of chemicals, or, you haven't been filtering your fryer properly. And it's not that we want to go and we want to, say to this person, hey, you're not doing it right, but it should be a coaching session, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it is what it is. It's there. We have this information to show you that, not necessarily we even suggest that you do these things all the time the way that everybody says, but hey, it's there, it's black and white. We know why we're having these failures in certain instances. So it's accountability at the end of the day. And that's about the best way I can sum it up. I mean, working at a place with, 200,000 square feet of banquet service and 6 freestanding restaurants, you don't have time to hit them all, but you walk into one and you look at the fryer, or you look at the floor, or you look at the speed oven, and something is wrong right away when you walk in there, right? So at the end of the day, everybody wants something. They want it for free, but they have to take care of their stuff if they want to maintain the warranties and everything else.
Great answer, Sean. Thank you. Key word you used there was accountability. I think let's just shift gears for a moment here and just focus on the culinary aspects of running operations in the lodging sector, but also, before we do that, food waste. So let's look at food waste and sustainability. Ken, mass catering creates a lot of waste. Do you think that sustainability and the amount of waste that's generated within a lodging sector operation is being treated more seriously now? Less so, the same than it was maybe pre-pandemic?
Well, that's a very good question. I would hope more so now, right? Although I don't know that the pandemic had anything to do with it. I think just, from a good business sense, right? I think the ability to really drill down and manage inventory, I think will help to avoid waste. I think great operations, right, can help to avoid waste. But I think you're always going to have some of that. And then, so how do we treat it, right? Is the waste truly waste, right? Or is it byproduct, right? Is it something that's not consumable that something has to happen with? Does it go into the trash? Does it go into compost? Or is it food that we can feed people who are hungry, who don't have access to food? And, that's a whole nother discussion and a whole nother line and approach. We're working on a couple of food banks now. A couple of them are very, very large. And a lot of what they rely on comes from the hospitality industry, right? Whether it's overbuying or overproducing. And so again, what do you do with that? And the what do you do with it has a management piece to it, right? It's got to be managed and people have to manage it and there's a cost to it. And so I don't know the answer. I mean, maybe Alec does from, perspective of some of his clients, but it is conversations that I've had with some of our clients is, what should we do? What would you like us to do? How do you foresee this, right? And listen, when you're talking about building a large resort or a hotel that's 36 months from opening, right? They're not really that interested in talking about what do we do with the extra leftover from banqueting until they have all this leftover from banqueting. And they're like, okay, now what do we do with all this stuff? So we do try and talk about it early on, but a lot of times it doesn't get the early attention that it should.
Yeah, great answer, Ken. Thank you. Alec, do you have a view on that at all in terms of how it's approached in your projects, but also the issue of sustainability more generally?
It's pretty wide. It's a pretty wide topic, right? It could include anything from moving to all electric kitchens, which are more or less sustainable, depending on which part of the country you're in and what kind of power grid you've got and where your power ultimately comes from. I'm bullish on that direction because I think we're moving that way in general. And again, the tech is caught up. There's great options there. We have more and more all electric kitchens in development every month, it seems. Sustainability could be talking about, and I know one of your pre-delivered questions was about how it's impacting cuisine and whatnot. So the sustainability question is about the development and the construction side. It's about the operation side. It's about the waste side, right? So Ken touched on a lot of the waste stream side. We see a lot of interest in using digesters, dewatering equipment, on-site composting with a rooftop garden. All these things are great and aspirational. They're usually the first things to hit the chopping block. Unfortunately, people want a combi oven. They don't want a digester. And the moment we start getting into that, even though the tech is there and it's great, and I have a background in organic agriculture from my undergraduate days, so I've been following this space in particular for a long time. The interest is there. On the waste side, it involves a lot of different agencies, whether or not you can use a digester. Can you send that stuff into a gray water irrigation system on your property, or can you send it into the sanitary sewer system? You know, what can you do with that? A lot of the cities where we do a fair amount of work have green waste diversion or landfill diversion mandates in place. So I would say the number of projects that we have where that kind of compost landfill diversion is not a requirement is a vanishingly small number of projects these days. So that one usually impacts loading dock. It impacts whether we have good ventilation in those areas. Is it south facing? Does it have, you know, any odors or smells or cleaning protocols that need to be put in place? On the operations side, however, that sustainability thing is been really interesting to watch how that's changed in the landscape of what's available locally, regardless of where you are. Specialty products, local farms, you know, in-season produce. And this is something that used to be the purview of specialty restaurants and chef-driven F&B outlets alone, but now it's everybody. It's, you know, it's fast casual. It's in the hotel and lodging sector. It's definitely in B&I. It's in a lot of school food programs, working with local farms, farm to school. These programs are great. I mean, there's been a lot of good impacts there. I think also on the one other thing on that, and this is more of a consumer side behavior that I'm seeing. I think there's going to be a lot more of a push towards kind of decadent, delicious, rich, but healthy-ish plant-based products coming into the market that will continue to give consumers an opportunity to feel good about their choices and feel like they are contributing in a meaningful way that I think a lot of operators aren't quite ready for. And that changes what we need in terms of equipment. It changes some of the calculations that some operators are making. Ken, the Val point you made before about product weight and shrinkage during cooking and whatnot is less impactful if you are predominantly vegetarian restaurant, for example. So that's a factor you need to add in, but you also don't need to worry about having a butcher shop. We don't need to design an aging room. There's a lot of up and down factors. As always, it depends.
Great stuff. Thank you, Alec. Sean, let's get your view on how the sort of menus are changing. That Alec made some great points there about, you know, the push towards local food, specialty products, farm to fork, all that kind of stuff. How are you seeing menus changing in the sector?
Right. I mean, you know, especially with the meat alternatives that are out there right now, there's so many. You know, if you just wandered around NRA this year, so many different companies that are just getting their startup, and everybody's waiting to jump on them, right? There's a lot with fast casual restaurants and QSRs that just sucked up these companies and are in development right now with some of this stuff. And then that'll greatly transition into the restaurant and hotel and lodging world also, right? So we have to think about too, when we're thinking about all those meat substitutes, essentially all we're doing is we're giving people more variety on their menu, right? And it's kind of a tricky subject because when we went into COVID, we seen everybody slash their menu sizes, right? They went into limited menus. And I mean, that's fantastic for the operator, and they're keeping less product on hand. In a lot of cases, the restaurants and different businesses that were doing really well were making money hand over fist, just running off of reduced menu and not having to have these specials or carry things that were lower on their product mix, right? But as we grow out of the pandemic, you know, I'm going to assume, which I hate to do, but at a certain point, you know, people are going to want all that variety back. And whether you like the plant-based products or not, or whatever it is, you know, it's going to have to be an option. And from a chef's perspective, you're going to want that best option that you could possibly have for your customers. And then you go into the aspect of, you look at a lot of these products that are, you know, I mean, they're processed in a way to be vegetarian, vegan, whatever, plant-based meat alternative. They're going to work better out of certain pieces of equipment than others. And whether that be a traditional oven, combi oven, speed oven, fryer, they're going to have specific differences in the way they're cooked from one platform to another, depending on that technology. So, you know, it's just like going and buying a thing of tater tots from the grocery store. You know, you bake them in your oven, they come out great, but you put them in the fryer and they're not like the tater tots you get from a restaurant. Why? Because they are designed to be cooked out of your oven at home not a commercial piece of equipment in some cases. Same thing with these new products rolling out. So we're currently in that process of testing a lot of these items and seeing what works and how it works, not because anybody's asking us to per se, but we want to see how they react with the equipment. Where's the future of this product going? Does it cook better out of a combi or a fryer? Can we put it into hot holding? You know, what are some of these ways that we can give some of these companies feedback that, hey, your product does great X, Y, and Z, and you know, you can pitch that to your customers also.
Great stuff, Sean. Thank you. A final question for you all, please. If we could just go around the table, I'd like to know, just Sean, you talked about the future there. Let's focus on that. What do you think each of you will be the biggest trends that will impact on this sector in the future, but also some of the biggest innovations that will also change the game as well? Alec, let's start with you first, please.
Based on what we're seeing right now, all electric kitchens is definitely probably leading the pack. I try not to prognosticate too much, right? Our clients are the ones who bring us what's fresh and what's new, right? They're the ones out there trying to carve out their niche in the world. So we react to them, but the electric kitchen is an interesting case study. There's a lot of benefits. There's a lot of seemingly obvious benefits, and then I think a lot of missed expectations. And so there's a lot of calibration there as far as getting folks to understand what we can do, what we don't recommend. There's a lot of great ventless options out there. I don't think ventless is an automatic free-for-all to get away from using traditional canopy hoods. I think there's a lot to consider in there, but yeah, to put a general one out there, I think electric kitchens are definitely becoming more and more common in our portfolio, and I see that trend increasing.
Great answer. Thank you, Alex. Ken, same question, please.
Yeah, I'm, like Alec, I'm a bit keen on some aspects of the electric kitchen, right? I think in certain areas of the country, gas is becoming a challenge, right? California, New York City, limiting, permits for new gas. And however, right, there are challenges with going electric, right? Again, you have New York City or, places in Texas that at times of the year, they don't have enough power to, power their community. So, we're going to add to that somewhat. I still contend, I think a couple of great advancements. I think technology in terms of communication versus robotics. I think from a manufacturing perspective, I think the more and more the equipment can communicate with the home office, right? So instead of the guy waiting for the wheels to fall off the fryer, right? A service guy just shows up, right? There's an app-based subscription. I put in my credit card and, I get a text message or an email that, your fryer or your induction burner isn't performing to optimal. We've noticed. You may want to check it out, or just click here and we'll have a service tech there within the next 2 hours, right? But we already got your credit card info. We're going to charge you for it, right? But you're not going to go down. We're going to keep you up and running. So I see some of that communication technology as being a plus, but I still tend to hang my hat on, I think you're going to see some amazing new technology in kitchen ventilation, which again has big ripple effect for building mechanical system, building well-being. And I think building well-being is going to become the topic of it already is a topic, but I think it's really going to be the hot button for the next 10 or 15 years until a lot of companies get their energy consumption more in check.
Outstanding answer. Thank you, Ken. Same question to you as well, please, Sean.
Right. So I'm right in the middle of both of you guys, Alec and Ken. It's it's just going to be interesting to see where it goes, right? So we have the whole green initiative, and everything is moving towards being more carbon friendly and everything there as far as emissions, whether it be gas or ventilation, anything else. And I always kind of like to take cruise lines, for example, right? You know, they're all induction. You basically have a self-sustained floating hotel out there, right? They're using digesters in some cases. Everything's electric in there, and they're self-sustained, right? And at the same time, too, when you're paying for the amount of waste that you're offboarding off of a ship, you're very conscious of it. But at the same time, like Ken was saying, you know, somebody needs to be there to manage that also. So maybe there is more of the detail put into those lines of communication that, hey, maybe they're not necessarily kitchen personnel or chefs, but you have more people overseeing these operations in detail through any information that can be gathered through these connected kitchens that are, everybody's going to be able to work towards a common goal, whatever that may be heading into the future. So it's really, it's going to be exciting. That's all I can say. It's going to be very exciting. But the technology, I would say the technology, we're basically there. As far as that goes, it's just a question of gathering, sorting, and filtering that information to where it's applicable for the end user to apply that knowledge to growth moving forward.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sean. I think that's a perfect place to close upon. Alec, Ken, and Sean, huge thanks for joining us today and for illuminating this topic so wonderfully. I'd like to thank Welbilt for their support. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned to fcsi.org for future events. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.